For my 10th birthday, my dad gave me an ill-fitting Cosby sweater. He hadn't seen me in nearly a year, so the incorrect size wasn't surprising. If he thought, though, one look at those ugly pink and purple triangles, and I was choking back tears, I mean, if he thought I was the kind of girl who would wear that sweater, then maybe he didn't know me at all. I banished it to the back of my closet and worked myself into a frenzy over what to tell him. Just say you love it, my mom said. It's the kind thing to do. She believed that white lies kept the world running smoothly. So I told him I loved it. My dad was thrilled, and I felt better too. I told a lie, and nothing bad happened. Except I got another Cosby sweater for Christmas. I was a deeply insecure kid, racked with social anxiety. Spending time with other kids tied my stomach up in painful knots. I was so worried about saying the wrong thing and embarrassing myself that it was easier to just stay home. When girls from Brownies would ask me to spend the night, I panicked. Mom, what should I say? Just blame me, she said. Say I won't let you go. And so I did. Afterwards, I marveled at how easy it was. Mom was right. Lying was great. It didn't hurt anyone, and I could make my problem go away without actually facing the difficult emotion. I spent every weekend at home watching the Golden Girls with my mom, who saw no problem with my lack of a social life. Anything that felt challenging, I could just lie my way out of it. I made it through Northwestern, despite the 4-year-long nervous stomach ache, and even made some friends. I watched these new friends deal with challenges head-on, and I strived to emulate their approach. My habit of lying became a regrettable part of my past, but something I believed I'd outgrown. I moved to New York and joined a theater company. My older brother, Smokey, moved up from Atlanta to join me in the city. We were roommates and living our dreams. I was acting, and he started grad school at Columbia. Everything was perfect until he started experiencing a persistent tingle in his arms and pain in his neck. On a visit back to Atlanta with my mom, Smokey had an MRI. A couple weeks later, after he left, the doctor called my mom and told her the results over the phone. Miss Nelson, he said, I'm sorry to tell you, but it looks like your son has multiple sclerosis, MS, the debilitating autoimmune disorder that at best causes loss of mobility and coordination, at worst, depression, blindness, and total paralysis. My mom cried on the phone as she told me the devastating news. I consoled her and promised her that Smokey would get the best treatment in New York. And besides, didn't the doctor say he needed further testing to be sure? We're not going to tell him, she said. A coldness crept over my body as she enumerated her reasons. He has finals coming up. He's worked too hard to throw all that away. We can tell him later. It's not like anything's going to change in a month. I felt like I was getting sucked back into the vortex of my misguided childhood. I was sure Smokey could handle his finals and deal with this potential diagnosis, but my mom was insistent. I had never gone against her in my life. She loved us more than anyone, so why would she do something to hurt us? It didn't feel right, but I twisted myself to acquiesce to her version of reality, because what's the harm in a month, I thought. The pressure of the secret got to us both. I was sneaking out of my apartment to have illicit conversations, not with a married man, but with my mom, where she would cry and I would try to convince her that we should come clean to Smokey. I felt guilty that my loving brother, who had always supported me, was sitting on the other side of our shared bedroom wall, possibly very sick and unaware. Every time I saw him rub his neck and cringe in pain, my stomach would cramp up and inflict a fitting punishment. I worried that by keeping this a secret, was I making his MS worse? This was 2001, before Googling was really a thing. If I had wanted to know about MS, I would have had to walk to a Barnes & Noble and buy a book, which I couldn't exactly keep lying around my apartment. Really, everything I knew about MS came from the West Wing. I would watch President Bartlett lie to the entire nation about having MS and smugly think, I'm just hiding it from my brother. After his finals, I called her to ask her how she wanted to do it. Let's tell him in person over Christmas, she said. I could hear the ice cubes clinking in her highball glass. But the holiday came and went without my mother saying a word. Back in New York, I insisted it was time. But we can't, she cried. If we tell him now, he'll never break up with his girlfriend. It's true that my brother was having doubts about his relationship. My mom believed that an MS diagnosis would push my devastated brother into his girlfriend's waiting arms and they'd be stuck miserably together forever. So now we were deliberately withholding information about his health in order to manipulate his romantic life. Winning. Smokey did ask whatever happened with his MRI. But my mom told him the results were inconclusive, that he should go for more testing. Oh my God. This is the definition of burying the lead. Smokey had no reason not to trust his own mother, let alone think she was conspiring against him with his sister, so he got busy with school and blew it off. Months ticked by, where we repeated this pattern of me begging my mom for her permission to tell my brother, and her begging me not to. I began to realize that the person we were protecting from MS was actually my mother. Lying had become her coping mechanism. She was the one who would never recover from that diagnosis, not Smokey. Nearly a year had passed before I finally caved and told my father. He called my brother immediately and told him the news that his sister sitting in the room next door wouldn't. I think it was easier for Smokey to deal with the reality that he might be sick, more than the knowledge that his family hid it from him for a year. He unleashed a torrent of anger on my mother, but for me, he maintained a reserved remove, which was much worse, because I knew then our close relationship had been forever altered. He got tested again, and the results, delivered straight to him, came back negative for MS. He was fine. From that moment on, I vowed that I would never again go along with my mother's deluded schemes. I was done being her protector, no matter how much it might hurt her. Being an adult means telling the truth, even when it's the harder thing to do. I joined the world of the absolutes. Things were either true or false, right or wrong. My mom would tell you that this is when I became a little bit bitchy. But I enjoyed the clarity of my black and white world. That is, until the grayness seeped in. Last month, I found myself in my mother's bed watching a rerun of The Golden Girls with her, just like old times. It was the episode where Blanche starts dating Dorothy's ex-husband Stan for some reason. I remembered every word of it, but for my mom, it was like watching it for the first time because, in a way, she is. After decades of alcoholism, my mom is debilitated by brain damage caused by her drinking. Some days are good, but most days she feels confused, terrified by the hallucinations that plague her day and night. She cries to me and says, "Why did this happen to me? What did I do to deserve this?" I take a minute and I think through how I want to answer. There's the truth, that she could have prevented this if only she had stopped drinking sooner. And there's the lie, that will help her get through an already unbearable day. Knowing which is right is the only way I know I've finally grown up, that I can trust myself again. I hold her by the hand and I say to her, "I don't know, Mom. Just unlucky, I guess. Thank you."